How much do you know about Lewis and Clark? If you're anything like I was before I started researching them, you don't know as much as you think. Lewis and Clark were the most successful explorers of their time. Meriwether Lewis was a captain in the U.S. military. William Clark was a lieutenant in the U.S. military. After their service, Lewis became Thomas Jefferson's personal secretary, and Clark became the manager of his family's estate. In 1803, President Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory from France, sparking the curiosity of exploring the Louisiana Territory and beyond. Jefferson asked Lewis to captain this expedition. Lewis agreed and asked Clark to co-captain with him. They gave themselves the name the Corps of Discovery and gathered a variety of men, including Clark's manservant, York, who was given equal privileges and work as all the other 32 men in the Corps of Discovery. Their first exchange with the Native Americans was with the Oto tribe. They traded paints, beads, and tobacco. The Oto tribe gave food and information on the upcoming route and its potential dangers. This exchange went so well that the Corps had hopes that all future exchanges with Indian tribes would go just as smoothly. However, when the group passed through the Teton Sioux part of the river, they gave them a medal, a military coat, and a feathered hat. But the Sioux demanded a boat as the price of passage. As the Teton Sioux got more and more aggressive, the Corps of Discovery prepared to fight back as needed. Clark drew his sword, and Lewis prepared to fire the swivel gun from the boat. Eventually both groups backed down, and the Corps continued upriver, avoiding violent conflict but establishing poor relations with this tribe. The Corps of Discovery stopped at Fort Mandan on the Missouri River in North Dakota for their first winter camp. At Fort Mandan, they met and hired Sacagawea as the official translator for the expedition. Sacagawea was the daughter of a Shoshone chief. When she was 12, she was captured by another tribe and sold to a French-Canadian fur trapper who later married her. As the journey continued, the Corps encountered animals that amazed them, such as mountain goats, grizzly bears, prairie dogs, and beaver. Believe it or not, Europeans had never seen these animals before. In the journals that Lewis and Clark kept on their trip, Clark wrote on September 7, 1804, that the Corps discovered a small village of animals that burrow in the ground, killed one, and caught one alive by pouring a great quantity of water in its hole. They explored rivers and forests that were new to them and to all Europeans. They came to the Great Falls on the Missouri River and spent 3 months trying to go around. When they did finally get around the waterfalls, they met up with a Shoshone tribe to get horses they needed to cross the Rocky Mountains. Surprisingly, the chief of this tribe was Sacagawea's brother. From the time they saw the Rocky Mountains, they were eager to explore them. This feeling died once they got there. It was cold in the mountains. They weren't prepared, so they rarely found food. They had to kill and eat some of their dogs and horses. They nearly died many times in the mountains, both from cold and starvation. When they finally made it through the Rocky Mountains, they were going with the flow of the river instead of against it like they had for most of the trip. They met with the Nez Perce Indians and traded with them for dried fish and roots. The Corps hollowed out 5 new dugout canoes and headed downstream. The Corps of Discovery let the Nez Perce take care of their horses until they met again on the return journey. 1.5 years after beginning their expedition, on November 15, 1805, the Corps of Discovery finally reached the destination they had been traveling for, the Pacific Ocean. Before returning, they set up their second winter camp. Once spring allowed travel, they began their return journey. The return journey was much easier than the westward journey. They arrived back home, and the crew was showered with awards and fame. Lewis and Clark were the greatest explorers of their time.